In this video, I would like to describe the tax burden where the price elasticity of demand is greater than the price elasticity of supply. If you recall from the previous video, I already showed what the tax burden is going to be. It's basically where the tax revenue comes from, who has to have that burden. So we discussed that partly it's going to be because customers have to pay a price higher than the equilibrium price without the tax, and partially it's going to be because the producers have to give away the tax that they charge onto the consumers. Hope this makes sense. Now, in the previous video, the tax burdens graphically were very similar. It was the area of a rectangle for both the consumers and the producers, and the rectangles were of similar size. The reason being is that at that specific level of quantity, the demand and the supply had very similar elasticities, and therefore the burden shared between them were quite similar. Now, to be more precise, if the price elasticity of demand is equal to the price elasticity of supply at the given level of quantity that's being traded on the market after the tax, then the tax burden of each, the consumers and the producers, will be equal. However, if we argue the case where the price elasticity of demand is greater than the price elasticity of supply, the situation changes. Why is that the case? Well, first of all, let's reason logically and then we'll reason graphically. So consumers, or let me say it that way, the price elasticity of demand is showing the reaction of the consumers to changes in prices on the market, whereas the price elasticity of supply is showing the reaction of the suppliers to changes in the market. When we have a high price elasticity of demand, meaning that the demand curve is relatively elastic, as we can see it on this purple curve over here, it's a fairly flat curve showing a high elasticity of demand. Now, when that is the case, this speaks of the fact that consumers are very sensitive to changes in prices, meaning that if the price changes, the price increases, then customers will reduce their quantity demanded sharply. They will reduce it by a lot. Whereas a fairly inelastic supply, which is showing by the steep green curve over here and the steep blue curve over here, which is the supply curve after the tax, that speaks of the fact that even though there is an increase in the price level on the market, suppliers are willing to increase their quantity quite much. So therefore they're not that sensitive to changes in prices. Meaning that when the tax is imposed, customers are less willing to pay that higher price that's being taxed, versus suppliers who are more willing to impose that price on the market. So therefore customers will have to incur a smaller burden of that tax, since they are not very willing to incur a higher price for their consumption. Graphically, this looks in the following way. As we can see over here, we will apply the same logic that we did in the previous video with the rectangles. Okay, so I'm going to change color real fast and we're going to do so. When the customers are paying a price higher than the equilibrium, for instance over here, this is the price that customers pay after the tax, and this is the quantity that's being taxed from 0 to QT. So therefore this rectangle that I'm shading right now is going to be the tax burden of the consumers. Okay, so this is going to be the tax burden of the consumers, and with the same logic we can apply the reasoning to the producers. The producers are going to receive a price smaller than the equilibrium price because they have to give away the tax to the government, and as a result, for the entire quantity that's being taxed, this is going to be the tax burden that producers have to incur, the tax burden that falls on the firms. Okay, so tax burden for the producers. And just like we reasoned logically a few minutes ago, this is proven graphically as well. The rectangle, the area of the small rectangle, which is the tax burden of the consumers, is smaller than the rectangle of the producers, okay, than this yellow rectangle, because the price elasticity of demand is higher than the price elasticity of supply. So as a result, it's the suppliers, the sellers, that are willing to incur more changes in the price, in the equilibrium price, than consumers are. Hope this all makes sense. I appreciate you all watching. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, and we are done.